Welcome to the Outside Insights podcast. Our goal is to provide content and ideas that help people close their personal and professional gaps by hearing how other people do it. I'm your host, Chris Burkhardt, and I'm beyond thrilled to have Peter Samuelson on the show today. Welcome, Peter.
I'm so happy to be here. You are not more thrilled than I am to be here.
Oh, we can debate that perhaps, but I want to just open this with the biggest question. How does a medieval literature major become a film producer and then ultimately roll that into being a pro-social entrepreneur? How does that happen? And I think that's what we'll answer a bit today, but maybe we could just start with, how did you get into film? And I think it's really relevant because becoming a film producer seems to be, as you describe it, the skills and experiences and things that have enabled you to accomplish what you've done, both in life and in this book. So there's a setup for you there to perhaps talk a little bit about how'd you get into film?
I very much loved actually, my French teacher in high school. And so I worked very hard for him. And my French became very proficient. And I also went and stayed a couple of years running as a teenager with families in France. And I guess I became bilingual. And when you get any kind of admission to Cambridge University, and I got a scholarship, which was a good thing because it meant that my parents didn't have to pay, they don't let you go right away. They tell you in January, you get the telegram, congratulations, full scholarship, Emmanuel College, Cambridge, but you can't go till October, which then raises the question, now what do I do? I'm 18 years old. What do I do? So by complete fluke luck, I met a producer of the Steve McQueen film, Le Mans, who said, I need an interpreter.
Peter, and Steve McQueen is the Brad Pitt of the era. Is that a fair way to describe? Okay, all right, go ahead.
I would say Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise combined.
Yeah, with a bit more testosterone, even, I'd say. Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty much all Steve had going for him. Very handsome,
yes.
did his own stunts and so forth. So I ended up at the tender age of 18 in Le Mans, France, living in a Winnebago, eating in the commissary, saving up enormous amounts of money, and I was functionally the unit interpreter. And so at the end of that, I went off back to college, did my bachelor's, did my master's, and how I earned pocket money was through interpreting. And I also, when you start in any job, in any industry, you start networking. And I worked for a television commercial producer, a man called Tony Bushing, and he wanted me to come on as kind of the production manager of this ridiculously expensive television commercial he was making for Chevron, where he took the two winners of the Monte Carlo Rally, stuck them in American huge ship-like automobiles.
That's the only way we did it back then.
Completely unsuitable, 9 miles a gallon. And we had these two winners of the rally recreate the route that they had won the Monte Carlo Rally, from Marrakesh up through Morocco, up through Spain, and across all the way to Monte Carlo. And at the end of it, Tony said, do you want to come back to Los Angeles? And I really didn't know what to do with a degree in medieval literature, which I have to say with hindsight, almost but not quite completely useless in a career sense. And I said, well, how would that work? He said, well, you come and work for me at the studio and we make television commercials. And I said, would I earn money? And he said, you would. And I said, and would it be enough that I would have somewhere to live? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, to start off, we have a guest room, my family and I, you come stay with us. And that was my first example, really, of this wonderful thing called American generosity. You don't bump into someone in Germany or Sweden, and the next thing they say, sure, come and live for a month and a half with me and my family. And I said, okay, and I'll rent a car. And he said, nah, we have an extra car. You can you can borrow a car. And that was the beginning of Samuelson in LA. And, we got me a work permit, and then eventually I got a green card. And eventually I thought, I think I live here. I should be a citizen. They have this thing called the American dream, and I think it's fantastic.
And you're living it.
I'm living it, and I feel an obligation to sort of lift up my new country and do good. And I guess one way of, well, why have you done 7 charities and raised over $1 billion for them and this and that, is because I sort of feel it's a two-way street. I've had fantastic opportunities because of the United States. I'm so proud to be a citizen, but I think I have to pay back in.
It seems as if you experienced abundance, but also came to the ready with having your own share of it as well. Perhaps it's a give and a receive kind of thing, but I've had the pleasure of getting an early read of your book. So those insights are going to be very helpful for our dialogue. I've had state treasurers on, and I've said, Colleen, please explain what the heck a state treasurer does. And I had a majority House leader on, and I said, we read that in the Wall Street Journal, but what the heck does one do? So if you will allow, what does a film producer do for us layman people? Have a little fun with that. And I know you've got great stories from the book. Please feel free to share if you'd like.
The producer knows how to keep a team together and focused on the mission. The mission is to produce the film according to the script, under the creative guidance of the director, on time and on budget, and make it damn good. The producer is the only person of 150 people making the film that has that general mission to deliver the goods. Everyone else has an agenda that is specialized. The videographer will always want the best equipment, and 3 of them. The key grip wants a higher tower, just in case. And the wardrobe costume designer will always want 3 of every costume in case 2 get dirty. And you are on the mission. And I can tell you the big revelation for me is what I learned from General Norman Schwarzkopf. So I persuaded Steven Spielberg, God bless him, to become the chair of Starlight, and none better. But once he agreed to do that, what became evident was that he was too shy to ask people for money, and they didn't want to meet with me anymore because we had Steven. And so how do we raise money? And we decided we needed a third person, somebody fearless, famous, who would make the ask. And I said, what about General Norman Schwarzkopf? He's big, he's fierce, he takes no hostages, and...
Did you know him?
No, not at all. One of the lessons in the book is just because you don't know someone doesn't mean you can't go and meet them. You can meet almost anybody, you just have to do it. And when they say no, you say, okay, well, that was the statutory no. Let's try again. Anyway, I got him to agree to meet with me. I flew to Tampa. I got in the elevator, and it lurched to a halt halfway between floors. And a little voice in the wall said, could you hold up your driver's license? And I held up my driver's license, said, oh, Mr. Samuelson, welcome. The general is expecting you. And it lurched upward and dropped me off in the penthouse.
No pressure.
No pressure. And I went into his office, and on his desk was the biggest gun I have ever seen. And I've seen some guns because we use them on films. And
I sense his was a real one.
His was definitely a real one. And I said to him, General Schwarzkopf, so nice to meet you. May I just ask you, is that pointing at the gun because
is that real?
Well, no, I knew it was real because he's a general. I said, is that for terrorists? And he said, no, journalists. So a very large man, very tall. And I told him all about what we would do. And I said, basically, you and Stephen and I, we will be in the middle and we will be the conveners. We will pull in these 3 groups of people that would never meet. The hospital lot, oncologists, pediatricians, psychologists, psychiatrists, hematologists, hospital administrators. the Silicon Valley group, long lines, last mile, software, hardware, programmers, and all of that, with all of their specialties. And then the media people, producer, director, writer, actor, editor, etc. And we will be in the middle, and we will have them collaborate in ways they wouldn't have dreamed possible to achieve our goal, which is to make seriously ill teenagers happier and have them experience less pain. And he leaned forward, did this thing where he would go like this, and he said, "Mr. Samuelson, what do you know about the United States Army?" And I said, "You could very safely assume nothing." And he said, "Well, when we recruit you, you don't just get a rank, you get a specialty. You're an infantryman, you're a rifleman, you're a cook, you're a driver, whatever you are. And you keep that pin, your specialty pin, your whole career in the United States Army until, if you're a damn fine leader, on the day in the ceremony where we make you a general, we don't just give you your general stars, we take away your specialty pin because you are no longer a specialist. You are a general."
You are a generalist. You are a general.
And I sat there and I thought, I'll be damned. That's why they're called generals, because over thousands of years of battles, armies have realized if we put a specialist in charge, we'll all die. We need someone whose specialty is being a generalist, which is the longest-winded way of answering your question. What does a producer do? The producer is the generalist leader with the stars on his hat who leads the army that makes a film.
I think I was going to ask you about meeting the general and had the thought myself as a fellow entrepreneur that I still think my only mistake was I left my specialist pins on, right? You know, the entrepreneurial journey, if you will. All right. You've written a book, Finding Happy, A User's Guide to Your Life with Lessons from Mine. And what sort of struck me, I know it's in the title, but it struck me anyway, is that your book tells your story while helping others learn to tell their story. So I'd like to just tee you up. What do you hope folks will take away from the story in the book? And there's so much to unpack there, but it's a good place for us to start.
So what happened, one of the nonprofits of which I'm the founder, and I'm actually the serving president, which means I'm in charge, is firststar.org. So what we do is we take teenage foster kids at the beginning of 9th grade, and we house, educate, and encourage them on university campuses, even though they're only in high school, grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. We have them there. We give them a curriculum that is 1/3 academic, because if you don't get the grades, you won't make anything of yourself. 1/3 life skills, because, you know, they've been raised by wolves, and that's disparaging of wolves, which I understand take care of their kids. But kids in foster care, they're abused or neglected. They're carrying PTSD, quite a lot of them. So we teach everything in life skills from financial literacy, sex ed, how to brush your teeth, etc. And then the last third is community. It's family. It's unconditional love, the first reliable grown-ups they've ever met, security of being in the same place with peers for 4 years, and being encouraged. Climb up the ladder, explore your future. You are the only author of the story of your future. So I've done so much mentoring. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of young adults. And I've developed a kind of pattern recognition where I realized I should write down the topics that always come up. And I realized I had just written the chapter headings of a book. So you have to have self-discipline. I started getting up at 4:45 in the morning, 5 days a week, and writing for 1 hour from 5 o'clock. And in parallel, I started jotting down anecdotes, because no one has better anecdotes than a film producer. I've had things happen to me on films working with narcissistic beasts. Some of my stars, not all of them, some of my directors, very often the money people, just terrible people, and also peculiar. I mean,
And you had to make it work.
I made a film with Peter Sellers called The Return of the Pink Panther. I used to have to go around the set at 6:30 every morning, long before he arrived. And if I saw anyone wearing the color green, I'd have to go up to them and say, Harry, I'm so sorry. Go to wardrobe, change your socks. You know Peter won't work if anyone's wearing the color green. I mean, I have hundreds of these completely mad. I'm the guy on that Steve McQueen film where he arrived and I had rented for him to live in with his family, Neely and the kids, a beautiful French chateau in a little place called Viray-en-Champagne in the county of Sarthe. And
Sounds like it should be fine just the way it is, Peter.
and it was with this big, symmetrical, ornate, like mini version of Versailles garden behind it. And Steve arrived and I had a good look around. He said, oh, you did me proud. Thank you so much. Very grateful. He said, I'd like to get, as soon as possible, backhoes and bulldozers in because I want to dig up the back garden and turn it into a motocross track. And I was like deer in the headlights. Remember, I was only 18. I said, Steve, they don't lynch people by hanging here. They behead them. And we will actually be beheaded. This garden and this castle have been here since the 17th century. And we cannot possibly, he said, but I have to have a motocross track. And I said, quick as a flash, I said, see that field over there where they're growing some crop? I promise you, I will somehow find a way to rent it, and we will get you your backhoe and your bulldozer and people to drive them, and you can drive one of them, and we will make the world's best motocross track, which is what we did. And I flew overnight up to Jönköping in Sweden in the company Learjet, and we somehow managed to get two Husqvarna motocross bikes into the passenger cabin because they damn well weren't going to go into the luggage compartment. And we flew him back, and he had a fine old time riding his motocross bikes around Le Mans and to work and the track. And
so that was the peak of he had just finished The Great Escape, I think, and he was probably at the pinnacle of his career. I am a Steve McQueen fan, so at least his movies. I'm not sure I like his stories so far, but thanks for great radio.
He was always very kind to me. I mean, he
Yes.
wrote me after the film. I actually have it on the wall right there. And I
send the book for all those that grab the book.
With his ink signature on it. So he was very kind to me. He was, in some ways, a bit of an eccentric, strange man. He had grown up in foster care. He grew up in Boys Town. He never really had a mum and dad, like ever. And he was what he was, and he, could play Steve McQueen in a film, and he did that repetitively, The Great Escape, and so on and so forth. He also really didn't know how to run a company, and yet he had so much power that it was his company making the film, and, it went way over budget and over schedule, and we never really had a script, and he was really only interested in fast cars and filming them really well, which we did. But the stuff, the love interest and the narrative and the 3-act structure, terrible.
Terrible stuff.
As a documentary of fast cars going very fast with no visual effects, all done in the camera with cars, driving 200 miles an hour with a camera on the front. Yeah.
This is the time for you to brag about being the youngest safety manager of fast cars, at least in France, right?
Well, you're proving to me that you really did read the book.
Well, don't mean to do that, but I did obviously enjoyed the heck out of it.
So on films, strange and somewhat stupid risks are taken. And I think I had proven myself reliable, but I was only 18 years old living in the Winnebago. And there was a terrible crash. And because the safety instructions to the fire engine had been, you cannot drive against the cars, you have to go all the way around. It took so long for the fire engine to get to where David Piper was burning in the car that poor old David lost his leg. So what does the production do? What would you do? Oh, well, we have to fire the safety guy and have a new track safety marshal, and we'll put him in charge, and he has to be bilingual. Who have we got? Oh, Samuelson. Yeah, you're it. Here's your orange jacket. Here's your walkie-talkie. Here's your flag. And so I did it. I remember my father came out, and when he realized what I was now doing on the film, he went absolutely berserk and he shouted at the producer, he's a child. He can't even take care of himself. What are you doing? There's a chapter in the book which is called What is a Good Risk? What is a bad risk? How can you tell the difference? And I've illustrated it with all four permutations. Risks I took I should never have taken, nearly killed myself rescuing that kitten, very bad idea. And then risks I didn't take that I should have taken because that would have expanded my horizons, and good risks I did take, and so on and so forth. And I've used the anecdotes to illustrate the book. It seems to work. The early copies, I donated 600 copies with another wonderful donor to all we call them the scholars in First Star, the teenage students, and all the alumni. And they went out a couple of weeks earlier. So I've started getting emails in. The publisher said, you're raving mad putting your email address in the book. And I said, I want feedback. And they said, but you might have 50,000 emails. And I said, God bless. If I get 50,000 emails, I will hire 3 people and we will wade through them and reply to all of them. And I'll supervise that whole effort. We should be so lucky. So anyway, I've started getting early feedback. It clearly works. Interestingly, the publisher thinks that the buyership is different a bit, but overlaps the readership. So there's stuff there for readers of every age. However, who it's really for is young adults. So yes. Gen Z, the upper end of the alpha generation and the lower end of the millennials, call it 15 to 30 years old. But the buyership is any older adult who cares about the younger adult. Grandma, grandpa, mum, uncle Phil, Auntie Sheila, high school teacher, middle school teacher, university lecturer, minister, imam, rabbi, priest, anyone who cares about a younger adult and who thinks that they're maybe at a bit of a watershed or they're having a self-esteem problem. It's a very lousy time to be a young adult in our country, and that's a very bad thing because they are the future of our country. Yes. They had to deal with the whole Zoom thing for 2.5 years during the COVID epidemic. And then after that, they've had to, get used to being behind academically. And now they're dealing with this regardless of your politics. And I have a foot in both ends. I'm a fiscal conservative and I'm a social liberal. Is that allowed? It's me. I get to choose. The book is for everybody and it doesn't take a political position, but it is a terrible time regardless of who the young adult is and where they stand politically, because they realize half the country in either direction hates their guts. That is a terrible feeling for a young adult to have. Could I have got it wrong? Am I wrong? Am I right? And part of what I've tried to do in the book is to really encourage them to read and watch deeply, not just their own rabbit hole, but read across. I mean, I talk about, well, what do I, they say to me, what do you read? And I say, I read and watch MSNBC and the New York Times and Breitbart and Fox. And I especially read all the reader comments, because that's where you have the unfiltered voice of people that you may not agree with, and you should read what they have to say. They're not evil, bad people. They just, at least to begin with, they don't agree with you. You should consider, and what I say to young people is, God gave you a brain. Use your damn brain, read everything, and take your own view. Don't do something or believe something because someone tells you to. Work it out yourself. That's called discriminating thinking, careful reasoning, and that is the purpose of your education. You think your education is to learn, math and read Shakespeare? Yeah, it is that. But it's also helping you to take a view so that you can navigate your own life. Your own life is just your life. It's nobody else's. It doesn't belong to your parents, doesn't belong to your school or your party or your religion or anything like that. Your life belongs to you. You are the only author of the rest of your life. you got to get it right. And the book is my effort to help kids build their skill set, kind of what I know now that I wish I knew when I was 18, but also to find happy. Because finding happiness, and I've divided it up into short-term happiness, medium-term happiness, long-term happiness. Each one is different. I've said short-term happiness, as far as I'm concerned, you choose your own. But for me, short-term happiness is a big tub of chocolate ice cream, something really interesting on the screen in front of you, and no one to criticize your chocolate ice cream intake. Medium-term happiness is exactly the same, but it repeats as much as you like. But long-term happiness, entirely different. You have to earn it. And one of the things that the book teaches is that you have to get outside yourself. And no matter how humble your situation, find someone to help. Volunteer, help out, do random acts of kindness. There's a whole course I teach in First Star. And remember, I'm teaching kids who don't have two pennies to rub together and they've been abused or neglected. And I teach this class, random acts of kindness and pay it forward. And I say to them, you're walking down the sidewalk. There's an old lady in rags lying down in front of you, fast asleep. Do you A, stop, put $1 under her arm and walk on? Or B, wake her up, give her $1? Or C, don't give her anything, don't wake her up, walk on by? And it becomes a conversation in the first class about the golden rule, the idea that if you see something that's unjust, that's out of whack, your human empathy wants to help. Maybe not everyone. There are some real so-and-sos, few of them, but most human beings feel the need to correct, like I met an old lady who was homeless and I said, where do you sleep at night? She said, I'll show you. She took me on the wasteland next to the interstate freeway. She said, I sleep in this. And she pointed to this ginormous damp cardboard box. And on the side of the box, it said Sub-Zero. And I thought,
She's sleeping in a refrigerator box.
I got a refrigerator. She's living in the box. What's wrong with this picture? And that became one of my, more wonderful charities called EDAR. Everyone Deserves a Roof, edar.org. So then I say, you want to come to the class tomorrow because something magnificent is going to happen to you. And they say, okay. And they all show up. And I say, there's a man in Dallas. His name's Mort. He's incredibly generous. He's my dear friend. He is donating money, and every single one of you, and I'm teaching this to 10th graders, you're each going to receive $200. Are you serious? We're going to get $200? Well, you don't get to keep it, I say. You have to give it away. You have to write a 300-word essay right now to whom or to what you wish it to go. And then we're going to actually give it, and then we're going to go back 2-3 weeks later and see if it was any good. Did the homeless guy buy the new shoes, or did he buy a big bottle of brandy? And they write the most, remember, these are foster kids. My name is Jose. I'm adding $10 of my own because that makes 210, which is 3 times 70. And I need 3 times 70 because it's $70 down at the shelter, the animal shelter, for them not to euthanize a dog. And I'm going to save 3 puppies. And the reason that I'm going to do that is the last time I was down there, I looked into the eyes of a puppy that had been very badly beaten, and I saw my own eyes because I was very badly beaten as well. And so I'm saving 3 puppies, love Jose. Or another one. My mum did some very bad things, and she's going to be in prison for another 2 years, 3 months, and 7 days. They always know the exact remaining incarceration. I love her very much, even though she did the bad things. And I know she hates the shampoo. And so I'm going to put it in her prison account so that she can buy better toiletries. So all the kids, the reason to do this is because we're trying to teach a lesson to our young adults. They are all taller. It's like watching flowers grow. It makes them realize, A, that it gave them joy, enormous happiness that they helped someone that they cared about. Secondly, it gave them what we call the grown-ups, the teachers. We call it agency. It gave them the ability, the ability to not be, the hard done by person every single moment of every single day. I said to a kid at lunch the other day, "Why are you always so hungry?" And he said, "Well, because they don't feed me properly in the placement, the foster placement." And I said, "Like when?" And he said, "Well, like I always go to bed hungry." And I said, "Well, why can't you go to the fridge and just get a sandwich?" And he said, "Well, because there's a padlock on the fridge." And I said, wait, stop. Who has a key to the fridge padlock? And he said, "Well, the husband and wife who run the placement and their two teenage kids. They all have keys, the four of them. I don't get a key because I'm the foster kid." It's unimaginable how
Yes.
their self-esteem is just crushed. So this class, beyond any other class, is to do with agency. It's to do with, I will make myself happy if I help someone else. And I know it works because we watch the kids afterwards and they act differently. They do random acts of kindness and pay it forward. It's part of unconditional love for each other, but they do it wider than that.
They must have such a sense of pride of feeling very complete, learning empathy, and how quickly they heal.
Yeah. We stood on the sidewalk last Christmas. Somebody donated a restaurant, and we had a bang-up lunch, maybe 100 kids and, grown-ups and this and that, and alumni. And we're standing on the sidewalk waiting for the vans to take them back to their placements. And the vans are always late. It's the running minor theme of First Star is the damn vans either get lost or something awful happens. And I'm seeing out of the corner of my eye one of the more troubled kids, a kid called Michael. He appears to be, he's not running away, he is sneaking away up the
That'll catch your eye.
And I'm thinking, is he running away? And I'm getting ready to say to, we call them the youth coaches, where is he going? Go and get him and bring him back. And Michael stops in front of an old guy lying on the ground. Now, I should tell you that while we were standing on the sidewalk before that, the head waiter came out and said, "What do you want me to do with the desserts?" Because no one ate them because they all filled up on the pasta. And I said, "Well, don't throw them away. Could you put them like in little bags or something and give them to the kids? They can take them back." What are they? They're little cupcakes with icing on top. Fantastic. Give them to the kids. And that had happened. Michael walks up to the old guy asleep, puts his little bag with the cupcake in the crook of his arm and sidles back to the group because he doesn't want anyone to notice him. And I thought, God, he listened to the whole class, because one of the things we had talked about is the great rabbi Maimonides and his famous pyramid of giving. The top of the pyramid, teach a man to fish, don't just give him fish, but also the top of the pyramid, don't get signage. Do not put your name on the outside of the building with gold letters. Do it because it's the right thing to do. That is the most decent thing to do. And Michael obviously had listened. He gave away his cupcake. So I sent in and we gave him another cupcake. And I said, "Good on you. I'm proud of you."
And that's fuel for more. The book opens fairly early with a chapter on the girl who froze. I'm not sure you can tell it without being emotional. I don't think anybody can read it without being emotional. But, I kept, as I was reading and writing things down to talk to you about how you just ooze empathy and ooze caring and, how it builds on itself. And I thought that story obviously talks about things you've talked about with what part of the 1/3 of the program that those kids are learning about. There's just a great example of the impact of the work that you're doing and frankly of the lessons you're putting in the book, right? It's part of the lessons that, so I don't know if you want to share that or if we could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So we had a talent show and there were about, I guess, 200 adults in the audience. We were in the Northwest Auditorium at UCLA. And the audience was faculty, administration, foster parents, staff, and so forth. And one by one, we call them scholars, our students, they're coming down in ones and twos, and they're doing a spoken word poem that they've written, or they're doing a little ad hoc ballet together, or they're singing a song or reading their poem, whatever it is. And down comes Catalina, age, I guess, about 15. And she stands there and the music comes up, and she was so frightened she couldn't get the first note out. And now she's just standing there like a deer in the headlights. And now it gets really horrible because the song has left her behind. And then the music stops and she's like frozen to the spot, and it's dreadful. And I can feel out of my peripheral vision over there that Karina, who's the director of our program at UCLA, she's getting up, she's going to go down and take Catalina off the stage. And I'm thinking, this is disgusting. This is terrible. We have failed. Oh my God, how did we allow this to happen? She's crushed. And then an amazing thing happened as we sat there. Catalina's still standing all on her lonesome in the middle of the stage, frightened and upset and beginning to cry. And in her cohort, that's her class, there is another 15-year-old who is like a large young man. I mean, he should be a linebacker in football. And he lumbers down there on the stage and he plants himself between the audience and her.
What gumption.
What
gumption. Wonderful gumption.
We can't see either of their faces, and we can't see Catalina at all. And whisper, whisper, whisper. And then two young women in the cohort go down. So now there's 4, and then there's 8, and then there's 15 and 20 and 25, and all 30 are down there, and there's a lot of whispering, and then a hand on the outside of this little scrum of young humanity goes like this, turn the music on. And thank God the playback person realized, go back to the beginning. And up comes the music, and no one knew what would happen. And out of the middle of this little teeming humanity thing on the stage, invisibly, is the little plaintive voice of Catalina. And she starts the song, and the more she sang it, without us being able to see her, just looking at her fellow students, her new family, the stronger her voice got. By the end of it, she was like bloody Beyonce singing. And
did they separate? Did they pull away, or did they?
No. They protected her. They stood between
the entire time.
And the music ended on her long sustained note. The audience went nuts. We stood up. Everybody stood up. There were people crying. There were a couple of people cheering. The kids had no idea what to do, so they sort of came down off the stage with their arms around each other, and I had to go for a walk. And other people did too, because I thought, we didn't do this. These human beings, these 15-year-olds, they did it for themselves. All we had to do for these kids was to give them the circumstances where they could give unconditional love to each other and receive it back. And the revelation at that moment for me, and I put it in the book, is you really can't thrive without, somewhere in your life, unconditional love. If you are a teenager or a young adult, you have to be able to go home, and even if you've had a terrible day and you may even have done something bad, they will love you anyway. They might even criticize you and say, well, you shouldn't have done that, but they will love you and give you a hug anyway, because that's who they are, that's who you are, that is the nature of your relationship. So this unconditional love thing is one of the pillars that we all need. And I think finding happy, yes, it is through volunteering, through helping, through putting yourself out, through standing taller because you lift up someone else. A man never stands so tall as when he helps a child in need, and so forth. But it is also through empathy, unconditional love, and you have to give it to get it back. And life is a circle. The circle of life is not just a song in The Lion King. It's also a truth. And it's in every single religion in the world. 170 plus religions. They all have this sense of fairness, of sharing, of, what is the most famous proverb? And it isn't invented by Hillary Clinton, even though she used it for her book. It is an African proverb which exists in every single tribe from Algeria in the north all the way down to South Africa and everything in between. It takes a village to raise a child. What does that mean? It means that it's a team sport, but it also means that every adult in the village is the parent of every child in the village, and that we all help. And I do believe that what is going on at the moment, regardless of your politics, which is this terrible polarized, we hate their guts because they're different than us, they're truly evil. Nah, they're not evil. They just have been misled away from what you believe in. What you want to do is go use your empathy and find someone who's trying to use their empathy in that group and try and find common ground and lift up the planet, lift up the world, lift up your people. In the end, and I've traveled damn near everywhere, certainly everywhere in the United States and Canada. Remember, I made all those television commercials. Commercials are brilliant. Every week, you're in a different place. Oh, Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. Oh, I'm in El Paso. Oh, I'm in Manhattan. Look, it's the Chrysler Building. So I learned my America, and I lived all over the place and stayed in more Winnebagos than anyone should ever have to stay in. And I've traveled the world. I've been not everywhere, but most places, maybe 50, 60 countries. People are the same more than they are different. They're not evil so-and-sos. Their government might be evil so-and-sos, but what happens, I think, is that people want to belong. They feel comfortable being tribal, and they want someone, they think they might be a bit scared of people who are different, and they would like a leader to help them not to feel scared. So if along comes a leader who says, you don't have to be scared, it's not that you're scared of those people on the other side of the valley who look different and dress different and worship different. No, you hate their guts. They want to take away what belongs to you, your food and your women. And I can absolutely, we went on a family holiday in France to a place called Périgord, and it's where they've got all the Stone Age cave systems, both where the Neanderthals were and where the Homo sapiens were. And I was sort of thunderstruck. It's cold. It's very dark. Doesn't smell too good. And
probably a bit scary.
It's very scary, and you're hungry, I'm imagining. And, the leader says, huddle together for warmth, and I'll protect you from the bad people over the other side of the valley because they want your food. And I guess Samuelson's law of caves is you can take the humans out of the caves. Maybe you can't take the caves out of the humans.
Well, it's scarcity versus abundance. Peter, you talk a bit about if you had one wish, and you're all over this topic, but this desire for all of us to consider the things you're mentioning, to our absence of empathy, our absence of understanding of our surface differences, our inability to argue during the day, but go to dinner at night and work things out. So if you had one wish, I'm thinking it is find some empathy.
I think so. I mean, to be slightly facetious, but it would be a wonderful thing. If someone of enormous wealth said to me, I'm fed up with buying bigger yachts. I think it's time I put something back and make my legacy. Could you give me some help? I would love to say, okay, let's write a business plan to find empathy for people who are not feeling any. And let's start by come to Berlin with me. There is a triangular grassy park, and on one of the sides of the triangle is a church. On the second side is a mosque, and on the third side is a synagogue. And they each do their own thing. God bless. We appreciate our differences. And once every week or two, they do a joint activity in the park. And I said, let's interview the whole damn lot of them and work out what's good, what's less good, how do we do it, why do they keep coming back, how have they managed to balance their pride in their differences with their pride that they found joint empathy. I think a lot of it has to do with people's attitude towards other people's children, because my observation is that adults have been persuaded to hate each other's guts,
Yes.
and that's regrettable. But I think it is a rare adult, unless they are perhaps irredeemable, that hates a little child who is different than them. I don't believe children are hated as much as grown-ups. So then the question becomes, how do we help people to experience otherness in a way that preserves their sense of identity and dignity? No one should be taking that away, but where they don't get persuaded by demagogues, frankly, crappy politicians bilaterally to hate each other's children. And dare we think that if we did it really well, they might actually find common ground with adults that they thought might be so-and-sos.
Peter, I can find very little to disagree with you on. The only thing I'll go back to is you talked about the economic buyers of the book. And what I like to think is you're right, the parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, pastors, etc. But I think what we can see in this, because I'm some of those categories, there's things that we can take away for our own lives, no matter what age we are. And they're great reminders, they're great lessons, they're great starting points to change. And we are the economic buyers for those that are your core audience for this book. But if we're honest, we'll probably read it first and then hand it to them and, want to see the changes in ourselves that we want for our children and grandchildren. So that's the only thing I could think to disagree with you on is...
I'm happy to be disagreed with on that. And
yes.
I hope that you're right. And those adults, I want to hear back from them too. And the email address is in the book.
So are you willing, I think you are crazy enough, are you willing to give your email address now and we'll put it in the show notes, although it is in the book? Or no, would you prefer?
It's in the book.
In the book. Very good.
The publisher thinks I'm raving mad.
A bit, yes.
Said to me, what will you do if you get 50,000 emails? And I said, I'll hire 3 people and we will wade through them. And if that's not enough, I'll hire 30 people.
Peter, I'll do it for free with you, okay? How about that? If that's if we can recruit a couple of more listeners, maybe we can turn it into something lovely.
I mean, where is joy? Joy is for me at the moment, it's such an honor that I'm getting these emails that tell me that the book resonates and is helpful. Oh, I didn't think of that.
Well, let's see the cover of the book.
So this is the only thing I've ever done graphic design on. And what I did is I thought, well, we know what it has to say. It's got to have the title and a user's guide to your wife with lessons from mine. And then I thought, and it's probably going to have the author name because every book has that. And then I thought, what is my book about? And I used AI to do me a list in descending order of the nouns, the substantives, the subjects in the book, not the verbs, but the nouns. And the more prevalent the word was, the bigger I made the font. And I sort of jiggled them around. And honestly, it was more interesting than beautiful. And then the publisher put a proper designer on it and they made it pretty. But if you see, you've got your big words there, life, love, social media, mentors, health, success. But then as you move in, you've also got these little words.
Career, school, adventure.
Dare, belonging, and so on and so forth. I can't make it focus. So that is what the book's about. It's intended to kind of be subliminal messaging that whatever the word is that's bothering you at the moment, it'll go, belong. How do I find love? Well, not under the mat, and not, I would have to say, on a dating app.
Peter, the other thing I loved about your suggestion, you have a great intro forward about how to read the book. And I don't know what it is with today about people finishing books, but you gave people permission to go to the chapter that catches their fancy, to the topic that they need help with,
Yeah.
to, whatever they're trying to improve upon, grab that chapter. And I think that's a phenomenal idea, because then the book has sustainability. It doesn't get put on the shelf. Maybe it's a guidepost that someone could use as they're going through whatever they're going through.
And of course, if the older adult reads the book and does just that, and then gives it to the younger adult, here's a message for the younger adult reader. See where the book naturally opens, and you'll know what's bothering your parents, grandparents, teacher, imam, lecturer, whatever, because they'll have had the book open there, and it will open to that place. And you'll say, oh, they're worried about their own success. They're worried about their career.
You mentioned a few times your version of this question, and one of my core questions is very similar. You mentioned many things that you wish you knew as a young person, and what advice you would give yourself as an 18-year-old. So I always ask folks, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self? Maybe you view it as the same thing, although you accomplished a lot from 18 to 21.
Yeah,
quite frankly. And feel free to answer that any way you'd like.
Well, one of the things I think is really important, especially for young men, is do not do things where you might die. If you have a statistically probable chance of dying, don't do the damn thing. Find something else. And I know of what I speak, because several times when I was a young man, I did nearly die, and I look back on those things. There's a reason why young men are the ones that our army asks to jump out of the trench and charge into the machine guns, and that is because they're willing to go. And the reason that they are willing to go, rather than, middle-aged men, is that the prefrontal cortex in a male human brain does not properly and fully develop until your late 20s. That is the part of your brain that plays chess. It thinks 2, 3, 5, 10 moves ahead. Okay, there's a tiger there, and it's going to eat me. Do I run? Do I fight? Well, he's standing next to me. I don't have to run faster than the tiger. I only have to run faster than him, because the tiger will eat him. Whereas if you are younger, early 20s or earlier than that, teen years, you are operating on the back, the reptilian back of your brain, which is only fight or flight. It's called the amygdala. And that is, fight or flight, literally. And, I look back, things that I did where I absolutely didn't think it through. I came back to
You never had a chance.
No, but I nearly died. Why did I vomit in the bushes one morning? Well, because I realized that what I had done the night before is I'd come back at 1 o'clock in the morning to my parents' house, and I didn't have my key with me, and I was damned if I was going to get into trouble by them knowing that I was out so late. So I looked, and there was a sloping wall up to the corner of the house, and then a drain pipe that went up to the third floor. And I could see
third floor, not second, third floor.
Third floor. And I could see there was kind of like a little half ledge that went along. And I thought, well, fine. So I climbed up and then up the drain pipe. And then I went along holding on by the grout with half a brick of ledge that only my toes could stand on. And I went past the 2 closed windows and I climbed in the third one, and I, went to bed. And the next day, down in the back garden, I looked up and I thought, oh, look at this. Underneath were flagstones, like a pathway. And I thought, God, I could have been dead, and that might have been the best of it. More likely, I'd be a quadriplegic in an iron lung or something for the rest of my life. I was terrified, and that was really stupid. And I did several things like that. I once climbed down a pipe duct in a hotel in Marrakesh in the middle of the night because a kitten was meowing, and I thought it needed rescuing. And I got to the bottom of the pipe duct, way down, in the dark.
In a hotel, down multiple floors.
And I couldn't rescue the kitten because it ran away. And then I realized, oh, this is really stupid. I don't have the upper body strength on these pipes to get myself back up. And what am I going to do? So I thought, oh, well, shout. But a big old hotel, 200 years old, big thick walls. Nobody came. So I sat there for a bit and I thought, oh, I might be about to die in a pipe duct.
Or a cat you didn't save.
Yeah, in a Moroccan hotel.
But it was worth it.
So I thought, all right, I've got to do this unbelievably slowly and kind of wedge myself in. And it took me 2 hours. And as light was dawning over the veranda, I fell back into the bathroom. And I was naked as well because I thought, well, it's disgusting in there. I'm not going to get my clothes dirty. I had a shower. I got dressed. I went and sat at my desk and I carried on doing the accounting of the film. There's a knock on the door, 6 o'clock, and it's one of our electricians. And he comes in and says, oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Would you mind if I go over my petty cash with you? And I said, oh, sure. And I'm sitting there doing his petty cash with him and going over the little folded receipts. And I'm thinking, he has no idea. I just nearly died in the bottom of the pipe duct. So I think I've done stupid things. And there's this chapter called What is a Good Risk? What is a Bad Risk? How can you tell the difference? And I've illustrated it with nutty things. But the other lesson that is in that chapter is think of your life as an envelope and you're in the middle of it and it's dark, but you have a pencil. You can choose just to sit cross-legged and not make anything out of yourself. Don't try anything. You'll be safe. Or you can poke with the pencil. And sure enough, if you poke with the pencil every so often, you will go through. And you will pull it back and you will say, whoops, I guess I will never be a concert pianist. But the great privilege of being a young person, young adult, is you can pull it back and you can try a different direction. And eventually you'll find out that you can be an engineer or a cellist or you can dance or you can be an architect or whatever your heart desires. And this book is to help you sort it out. And if you want to do something incredibly ambitious, I'm going to be a famous film star, I would never tell you don't try to be that. But I would tell you this, you must have a plan B, because the chances that you will ever in your life be a famous film star are very slender, very long odds against you. But if you train to do something that will put food on the table and help you pay the rent, you can still be an actor, because in your local town hall, they do every Sunday afternoon. They rehearse for some play, and if you want to play Macbeth or you want to be in the Pirates of Penzance or whatever you want to do on a stage, there is a way to do it in amateur theatricals without ever being a famous actor. And most of the joy of acting is not from the fame, which is incredibly bothers you a lot. Oh my God, they gave me an Academy Award. I'm not worthy of it. What will happen next? I'll never work again. Most actors, I think, are miserable. And most famous people are miserable. But acting is a wonderful skill, and you can do it on Sunday afternoons and then put on Macbeth, and you can play Banquo or Lady Macbeth. And that is where a lot of the joy of acting can be found.
Peter, I'd like to bring us home, and I may need your help a little bit with the pronunciation, but you've lived your life a certain way, and you've written a story, a book about the lessons that we can apply. But you use the words tikkun olam. Sort of. Did I say that correctly?
Tikkun olam. You did. That's Hebrew.
Yes.
Jewish, and tikkun olam means heal the world. And, you know, it's interesting. It's a time in history, and these times happen every so often, where to be Jewish is very unpopular at the moment, which is a problem. I mean, my grandson got admitted into several different universities. We had to look at where will he be able to go without being punched in the face. I mean, it's a terrible thing. People think, oh, yeah, they think they're the chosen people. No, go and read up on that in the Bible. It's your Bible as well as ours. It's not chosen to have space lasers or some nonsense. It's chosen to do good. It's chosen to do tikkun olam and to try and heal the world. And that's what generally we try to do. And yeah, that is what the book is about. It's not a religious book. I mean, I in the class I teach, Random Acts of Kindness and Pay It Forward, after we talk about all the world's religions and the idea of social justice, I say, so what? An atheist couldn't feel empathy? They say, no. The atheist could stop and give the dollar and so forth. And I say, who can tell me what is the second law of thermodynamics? And whose law is it? And there's usually, like, in a class of 30, maybe there's 3 who've ever heard of it. And they say, well, that's Einstein. It says that in a closed system, if you don't apply external energy, it'll all fall to bits. Correct. It's called entropy. What is a closed system? The engine in your car. If you don't oil it, it won't run. A family. If you don't nurture it, you won't have a family anymore. A planet. If we don't take care of it, it'll be 150 degrees in the shade, and those people will not be willing to live there anymore, and 100-foot wall won't stop them from going somewhere where it isn't 150 degrees with no water. So we need to, in a self-preservation way, lift up the world, but also by doing good, by helping other people, we create ripples on the pond and we find our own happy. And finding happiness is realizing that, yeah, you have one life, beginning, middle, and then you'll die. But you have a whole other life that's equally real, which is the life made up of your effect on all these other souls that you've helped. And they will then help other people. And those ripples over the pond, you are in all of them. And that is an equally real second life, and it's forever. And it's the closest we can get to eternal life is helping other people, and then they'll help other people, and we will be in them. They will carry our flag.
Thank you. So it's a heck of a transition, but where can people find the book?
Oh, it's really wonderful. So first of all, it now exists as a paperback and as an ebook on Kindle and as an audiobook, which is both downloadable and you can listen to it on your earpods, or I didn't even know this still existed. You could actually buy on Amazon and so forth. You can buy the CD of the book. So,
and by the way, if they like listening to you, they have an option to hear a bit more from you, don't they?
Well, the Tandor, the audio publisher, said, yeah, we're going to get you a wonderful reader, one of our best. We love the book. And I said, are they American or British? And they said, American. And I said,
no.
There's 600 foster kids out there who I've met, and they know what I sound like. And they said, well, you can't read it. You're not a professional reader. And I said, that's true. Can I audition for you? And they said, you can. So I recorded 2 chapters. They said, okay, you can do it.
You can do it.
So for a whole week, 6 hours a day, I sat in a booth in Burbank with a wonderful audio engineer called Paul on the other side of the wall, who every so often would say, do you mind going back to the beginning of that paragraph? We need to do that one again. You fluffed a word. And we got it done. So it's on Amazon and all the other online places that you can possibly imagine. And it's in all the bookstores, Barnes and Noble and so forth. The latest one, which my family find rather amusing, is it's going into Target. When I told the family that it was going into Target, one of my children said, and where are they going to put it? I said, I have no idea. And he said, I think you should tell them to put it between the condoms and the plastic cutlery. And I said, I think that is my book's most perfect place in the universe.
And Peter, if that isn't a reason for people to grab this book, I can't think of another reason to do so. I'd love to give you an opportunity to close. If you have any other thoughts, it's been a delight to have you on the show. I very intentionally wanted to let you share. I think the stories of the book support the lessons of the book, which support the life of the man. There's nothing but sincerity and authenticity to this. I had a opportunity to read it in order to do this time justice. And I don't recommend, I love books, Peter, but I don't recommend them often. And I think there's so much that people can take from this of any age. And Peter, I think you close with, I wish you light, love, and happiness.
Yeah, I did. I said that at the end. And I'll say that now.
Yes.
Chris, please go on Amazon and review the book.
Oh,
We need to get a bit of a viral thing going.
it will be done today.
I would be honored to have your review, and that's before I even know what it will be. I would say this to older adults, please let me help you. We mutually care about younger adults. They're the only future, our planet, our cities, our families. Young adults are the only future we have. We need to lift them up. It's a rough time for them. And I would say to young adults, the book is what I know now that I didn't know when I was your age. Please use whatever you find useful and let me know what you think. I'm here to be helpful, and I find my joy in helping you. So,
And I think Peter wouldn't naturally say this. I hope you don't mind me adding to that, is that great storyteller, it's funny, it'll move you, and you can tell it's real. So great lessons, great advice, but a whole heck of a lot of fun too. Peter,
well,
thanks for being on today, brother.
an honor. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everybody who has made it thus far listening to this. Very much appreciated. And yeah, tikkun olam. We need to heal our world. And also, by the way, that's how we'll be happy.